Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by rockauto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Hey, thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek podcast number 243. I am John Davis. Joining me today are writer, two-wheel, and producer Brian Robinson.
Hello, everyone.
Good day, Brian. Our over-the-edge reporter, Greg Carlos.
Hello there.
Who also produces the podcast. And last but certainly not least, online content coordinator, Jessica Ray.
Hey, guys.
And good day to you, Jessica. Okay, we got a lot to talk about. 3 vehicles, a lightning round, even a viewer question. We'll see if anybody's got a rant and rave, but let's start with you, Jessica, and give us the lowdown on the latest, most popular vehicle in America for more years than we can count, and I think the world, the new generation 2021 Ford F-150 light-duty pickup. Take it away, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, this is on the outside. It doesn't really look too much different. The front gets some upgrades, and it's certainly a little bit more aerodynamic than it was before. But of course, the biggest deal about this F-150 is its new full hybrid power boost engine.
Explain that.
So it's exactly what it is. It's a full hybrid engine. But I know that when we talk about hybrids, a lot of the time we think it's going to have like this amazing fuel economy. That's not really the case with this hybrid. This truck is meant to be a mobile generator. So you get the Pro Power onboard generator, which is it really is a game changer. When I got to see it in person, I got to see it being used. You have there's 3 different options that you have for power wise, and the plugs are in the bed of the truck, and it seems like they sort of thought of everything. It runs on 2 circuits, and it has an automatic shutoff, and you can actually use the truck for 32 hours straight, using having things plugged in throughout the truck, inside and out. They had like a flat screen TV. They had a grill, like some small grills, a refrigerator, all plugged in. And you can always look on the infotainment center to see how close you are to the maximum power that is allotted.
All right, I want to stop because you're talking about an onboard power source for tools and for camping.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked at a meeting, and I haven't driven it like you have, when I asked at a meeting, does that mean it could be used as an emergency generator for your home? The eyeballs got big, and they told me no, that's not allowed by fire departments, codes, whatever. And I'm sure that's because of the exhaust emissions. They're afraid somebody would run it in the garage and it would get into the house. But tell us that situation. What is this for? And more importantly, what is it not for?
Sure. I mean, so it's for people who, tailgaters. It was really interesting because, a lot of times you're hanging out right in the back of the tailgate. The exhaust is routed away, so you're not worried about
You're outside.
Yeah, when you're outside. And so for people tailgating, for those who are camping,
And
for those
work.
And for work, for on job sites,
I was going to say, there's a lot of leisure happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these trucks are bought
They're for leisure.
many times for leisure.
Absolutely.
So they definitely highlight that. Of course, they also highlight the power tools. They had one that had tons of power tools connected to it. So it really is overall all around. You can sort of plug anything into it. And I asked them, I was like, what have you, because what Ford tried to do was test as much things as they could to see how much was compatible and make sure really everything is compatible with the generator. And I think they even charged a Mach-E with it. So I thought that was really interesting. And of course, if you're ever worried, if you're out somewhere sort of remote, the truck has an automatic shut off. So if you're using the power, because it'll first use up the battery charge and then it'll turn on the engine, use the engine, and you have it's about a 30-gallon tank, and you can get 700 miles with a full tank. And it will automatically shut off when it's down to about 30 miles so you can get to the nearest gas station. So you don't have to worry if you're out somewhere sort of remotely that your car is just gonna, or the truck is just gonna get stuck there.
Unless the gas station is 40 miles away.
Yeah, then you might have to keep a closer eye.
But I'm correct. Don't connect your house to it. I mean, what's going to keep people from running a cord inside? I get it, but a lot of houses have these panels where you can plug a generator into it, and I assume that's a no-no. And go ahead.
I mentioned it. I asked them because you were like, I don't play a little devil's advocate.
Right.
So I did ask them, the engineers when I was there. And they were like, anything that you just take it out of your house and plug it in, sort of deal. I don't, nobody wants to be part of that. Any liabilities and there's warnings, don't have this running in your garage, sort of deal. So
what's the top one? It's like 7,500 watts. Anyway,
72.
It's a lot. I mean, you can power a lot of stuff in your house.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a 6,500 kilowatt portable generator, and I can power a couple of refrigerators, a lot of lights, a lot of stuff. Okay, let's get back to the truck itself. It's got some other new features. What was it like to drive it? I mean, did you notice anything remarkable? Because in a lot of ways, the rest of the truck is pretty evolutionary.
Yeah, I mean, of course, when it comes to, I was able to drive the hybrid and then sort of the rest of the regular powertrains. So I thought it was really comfortable. I thought they did some upgrades in the suspension a little bit. So it was, I drove it around sort of the back roads of Detroit and, or outside of Detroit where their proving grounds are. And so I thought it was really comfortable. And of course, the hybrid, that engine, it's really quiet. You don't feel like you're driving a hybrid. One of the things I did notice was that there was not the usual hybrid droning noises. I mean, I think I noticed a little bit, but I've driven a number of hybrids, so that was something I was looking out for. Your average person wouldn't notice that. Of course, the hybrid engine also becomes the most powerful F-150 engine with 430 horsepower and over 500 pound-feet of torque. It can tow up to 12,000 pounds. So I was really, really impressed with it. It was really powerful and it was very comfortable. One of the things is the 10-speed automatic for the regular powertrains and the hybrids. The gear ratios are exactly the same. And I was impressed. I thought it shifted very well. I know that's one thing we get complaints about with some of these 9-speed, 10 speeds, is that, on the downshift, it might not shift great. But I had no problem getting up to speed and then sort of braking. Of course, another thing it gets is a larger infotainment center. The screen it's large because what this F-150 is capable of is Ford's Copilot, which is their hands-free driving system that I know the Mach-E will have. And I didn't get to test it out or anything because Ford, I think, expects to roll it out, I believe, next summer. But it has the capability, and what it has is 3 cameras that are watching you, 1 on the driver's side door and 2 above the infotainment system. And they're going to be watching your eyes so that you're paying attention to the road, even when your hands aren't on the wheel. So that will be certainly interesting for us to test when the capability is is available, but that will be something that you can get. I believe it is with a subscription. So while your truck might be equipped with it, you don't actually have to have it, fortunately.
Anybody else want to jump in here? I've sort of been hogging this discussion.
Yeah.
I would say prior to COVID-19, the impending zombie apocalypse was like my biggest fear in life. So this sounds like would be a perfect vehicle for that. But since I can't power my house with it now that COVID-19 has replaced that fear, I'll hold judgment until I actually drive it.
I hear things about these fully foldable or reclinable seats to take naps or brainstorming sessions, as they call it, on the job site. I'd be interested to give one of those a test run. Did they do any kind of demonstration? Like, did you get to mess with that at all? Because aren't they massaging too? Like, if you get the top end.
I don't think I had one that was massaging, but they do, fold all the way back. And of course, because they do that, there's a ton of room in the back seat as well. There's all these hidden storage compartments and stuff.
Love it.
But the max recline seats, I think, are going to be a big hit because tradesmen are constantly having to, to sleep in their trucks. It's not unusual for them to sleep there, or even if you wanted to take it camping. So it's very roomy. One thing I think people will take some time to get used to is it does have an all digital dash, which I know is not a favorite of everyone, but I thought the numbers were big enough, and I thought it was very clear, and there's still gauges and such on there. So I thought that was pretty nice. Good truck. I think it's I was really impressed with it personally. So I'm excited for us to get it here for a couple weeks, and so we can really put it through. I also got to do off-road. I forgot about that. I did. I got to take it off-roading, and that was really impressive too, as well. So there were some spots where I was like, I don't know that I'm going to make it, but it really held its own. It's got a lot of really great drive modes: slippery, dirt and sand, mud, snow, eco, sport. So really, they're optimizing it for all different types of driving weather.
It was only a few years ago when we were all very skeptical that Ford was trying to reinvent the pickup truck with the all aluminum body, and of course that went very well. And then the V6 twin turbo, and that went well. And they're moving fast, and of course we all know there's a full EV F-150 coming down the pike too. So I don't think this onboard generator though was expected. So it's really cool. Can't wait to try it out. Okay, thanks, Jessica. That was very interesting. Let's move on to the second vehicle, and that is the Volvo XC40 Recharge. Now, Volvo is doing the Recharge name for anything that's electrified. However, it's a little confusing because the XC40 Recharge we had here is all electric, and it's actually Volvo's first all-electric vehicle on the market, along with the Polestar 2, their sub-brand. It's their first all-electric SUV. In Europe, they sell a plug-in hybrid, but that is not the vehicle they're selling here right now. This is a pure electric. I had quite a bit of time in it. It's got a lot of horsepower, like 402. When I compared it to the regular gasoline-powered XC40 that we had a lot of experience with a couple years back, it's a couple seconds faster, 0 to 60 under 5 seconds. You do feel the weight of the batteries. They're basically under the floor, but there's really no compromise in carrying capacity or cargo room for people that are worried about getting caught somewhere. It has a range of just over 200 miles, I think 208. However, you can recharge it at a DC fast charger in 45 minutes, get 80%, 40 minutes, I think, to get 80% recharge. So you shouldn't be caught too far from home. I did notice that when I drove it at any kind of pushing it, I thought you actually had a little bit more balance. It was a little bit more stable, and I think that's because the batteries are mounted low and fast. Didn't notice any particular objectionable noises. You don't obviously have a gas engine, but there is a little bit of a whir. Battery capability seemed to be quite good. It's 78 kilowatt hours. So overall, my impression was a very good one. I did not charge it up at home, but I did charge it up on a 240 system at work. And I remember coming back after about 4 hours and it was almost completely recharged. So if this is the direction Volvo is obviously going in, I think it's a good one. However, I will say that for me, 200-mile range is really not enough anymore. I mean, we've gone past that. When the Chevy, Bolt came out, it had 238 or whatever it was. Now we're sort of looking at stuff having 300 miles to be, shall we say, a good substitute for either a plug-in hybrid or a gas-powered vehicle. Anybody else have any experiences with it?
I mean, I was going to ask you, John, with your kind of a little bit of an engineering background, is the reason that it's a subcompact, is the reason it's smaller, or the reason it doesn't get the 300 miles of range, just like packaging? Can they just not get a big enough battery underneath the floor and keep it as an XC40?
Yeah, I think it's all a matter of how much battery you can stuff into it, and also the generation of the batteries. What we're seeing already is some vehicles coming out with second generation and even talking about third generation lithium-ion batteries, where the density of charge they can get into the same size battery cell is going up. And as that happens, they also happen to be getting the price down. That's why you keep reading about all these EV vehicles getting close to parity with gasoline engines for operating cost over the long haul. So it's a matter of how much space you've got and what generation battery you've got, so you can get the density of charge. I remember when we had the Audi e-tron in, it was just under 200 miles range, about 190 or so. And I did a trip up to the hills of Pennsylvania and back, and I was down to about 30, 40 miles, an equivalent of a gallon, 2 gallons of gas getting back, and got a little nervous. So the range anxiety was still there. And I guess currently for me, I would have to need about 300 before I would want to take it on a trip. Around town, I think 200 miles is fine. You probably wouldn't charge it up once every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think I was on the reveal, it was a year ago now, and I remember their big thing, which a lot of EV manufacturers are doing, is when you decide to go somewhere on a trip, you can plug it in like you traditionally would on your nav, but it'll plan the route for you so that it makes sure you have enough range to get to this charging station, which I haven't tested it in the real world, and I think that's something we should definitely do when given the opportunity. But that should do a lot to quell people's anxieties, being able to see it in real time, what's available, and know that I can get there with this many miles left.
Yeah, I think 200 miles is a good, important step. I mean, I haven't driven the XC40, but I did spend quite a bit of time in the Polestar 2, which I don't want to talk about too much because I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But same powertrain, and I drove it a lot. Never had, it's drive it around for a while and come back and still have 75, 100-mile range. To me was fine. I was very impressed with the overall powertrain. Very smooth. And the interior is just unbelievably nice in that Polestar. Yeah. I can't believe if any Tesla owner were to get inside that, they would be like, what the heck? If I, this is like a real car. I can't believe it. So, I think that, again, I don't want to talk about it too much, but I think Volvo's really got something going on. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, with that 200-mile range, they very similar to say the Mini SE that we tested a few months ago. They didn't do any significant changes to it to incorporate a larger battery, so you're getting an XC40. That's what you're getting.
Right.
It's just electric. So I think that is a pro and a con in itself, because it's a pro, you're still getting that vehicle, but yeah, that 200-mile range is, I think a lot of people maybe even for that price point might think, maybe I would go with an alternative.
Well, it's a valid point, because the Tesla Model Y, which is about the same, low 50s price as the XC40 Recharge, has a 300-mile range, slightly over 325, I think.
Yeah, and the Mach-E that officially got a 300-mile
Right.
range as well. So, and Greg will be able to talk about that eventually. So yeah, I think it's obviously a step in the right direction, but I think it ends up coming down to, does this make sense for me? So.
I think you're all right, because you got to remember, I mean, they're marketing this in Europe and in Asia, but particularly in Europe, where the distances that people normally travel by car are much shorter. Something with a 200-mile range is probably perfect, because they can plug it in when they get there. But here, it's still, do you want to pay $50,000 for something that can only do that? So I guess that's independently. I mean, I was ready. I really was interested in the Mini SE, but 100-mile range is kind of like so passé now. You wish they had waited a little bit longer, which I guess they're going to have another model soon with a longer range.
Yeah, and I would just add that hardly anybody has an EV as their only car in the household. So
Right.
most people will still have a gas engine car, whether it's hybrid or a plug-in, that they can take on those longer trips. That's certainly how I would do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I was looking at the Mini SE as a town car, just something to use around town. I did want to also piggyback, though, on Brian's comments about the interior. There's not too much on the inside of the XC40 Recharge that gives it away. So obviously some extra readouts, but I've gotten used to the Volvo tablet style interface. And yeah, you could say it's a copy of the Tesla, but it's got manual controls to override things. It's a heck of a lot easier to use than the tablet and a Tesla Model Y. As far as what you can get to. So yeah, you get into the Polestar 2 or the Volvo and you think, gee, maybe the Tesla engineers should learn something from somebody else, but I'm sure that won't happen. Okay, let's move on to our third car. This is a pretty cool one, because basically we didn't think this was going to happen. The 2022 Subaru BRZ, second generation of the BRZ sports coupe, sports car, whatever you want to call it. Certainly, I think looks a lot more aggressive. What do you guys think?
I didn't think it looked that much different, really. I think the
front end was a little meaner, don't you?
I think the big thing was the new chassis and a little more power. Although Subaru, they don't like to give you they like to give you a little teeny bit to keep you
Dole it out,
I guess. And it's not even a new engine; it's the Ascent engine, which you can get a manual trans. So now I'm like hoping they'll have an Ascent with a manual trans at some point, but that's probably not going to happen.
I don't think you'll live that long.
But, no, I mean, we didn't even think the first BRZ would be out, and we didn't think it would last, and we didn't expect the second one. But I mean, it's an awesome car. I don't know. It's hard I would have to drive it, but it's hard, with the Supra being there with like twice as much power and same basic look and not that much more money. I don't know. I wish it the best of luck. I know it has some fans and I love driving it. So I think it's awesome they brought another one out.
It has fans in the tuner market, because they'll take it and they'll throw turbos on it, and then they'll put a whole bunch of negative camber, take away some camber, and slam it to the ground and go to Cars and Coffee and talk about, how great their BRZ is. It's to the styling point. They made it more modern. I'm not sure it's any meaner. It seems like a little bit more like, bulky's not the word, but a little bit more rounded. The original BRZ kind of had really sharp angles, especially in the headlight area. Now everything's a little bit more rounded out. The interior, which Subaru just kind of sticks with that same style of it's getting more modern, but it's still more of a throwback, but not really to me in a good throwback way. It's more of just like outdated. But the manual transmission, glad they're going to keep that around. I don't think you could bring the BRZ back and do a just a purely automatic. 228 horsepower, I think, 220, something around there. It's not a lot of horsepower, especially when Brian brought up something like the Supra, which we just drove the newest version, and I was like shocked at how much more that extra like 80 horsepower, whatever it was that they got from the original Supra. It does a lot for it. And then when you consider this car that's 228, it's like kind of want some more, which was the argument we had the first time. It'll still be fun to drive though.
I wonder if Toyota will do anything different with the 86.
Can't wait to find out. But, you know, it's interesting because they do have the Supra. So I don't know. I think the new chassis is supposed to help it handle a lot better. And supposedly there's much stickier tires on it, which if you remember, part of what made the BRZ and FRS so much fun is that even with the little horsepower, you could still kind of get out of control with them. So I'm not sure if that'll change with the new chassis, but either way, it'll be a fun car for sure.
The last BRZ we had, I had a ton of fun driving it. So, I mean, all the stuff I set aside, it is fun.
You know, in this day and age, and I should let Jessica jump in here, but in this day and age where everybody's dropping their sport e-car coupes or sports cars, we have to be thankful that these two brands are keeping it up. Jessica, any impressions, anything you want to add?
Well, I mean, you know, the styling obviously hasn't changed much, but I don't feel like that's surprising. And because of, I think, how conservative Subarus tend to be or how they tend to look. And yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of horsepower, but it's a small, lightweight vehicle. So yeah, it's just one of those things that we have to drive to be able to truly comment on how good it's going to be. But I'm certainly excited to get behind the wheel.
I guess it'll be a while, but at least we know it's coming and it's for real. Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the lightning round because it's kind of a complicated subject that we're going to attack this week.
Yeah, and it kind of piggybacks on the whole, we were talking about Subaru. We're glad they did at least bring back the BRZ. I was talking about sports cars. And former MotorWeek staffer, you all remember him, Joe Ligo, and I were having a distance correspondence on our phones. And he forwarded me a Road and Track article called Income Inequality is Killing the Sports Car, which kind of takes a different approach than some other people where they say cars are just too expensive. They're saying car manufacturers are making cars too expensive. Instead here, he's saying basically the stagnant wages compared to skyrocketing home prices between 1990. He picked 1990 when the Miata was like $14,000. The average like 25-year-old male was making or $25,000, something like that. Anyway, the fact that income inequality is really to blame more so than the the rising price of cars. And what's happening is what he was opining was that because people in my age group, which is roughly 30 years old, which is historically when people would start having a little bit of extra cash, they could go out and buy a sports car. They could become enthusiasts if they weren't already. That's not happening because we're trying to buy houses that are way too expensive. And it's kind of killing sports cars. So I just was curious because we have a lot of demographics here covered. Was wondering what everybody else felt about his argument.
Okay, well, I'll eat up the dead air.
You start.
We
always wait for you anyway, so let's bring this up front.
This sounds like it would get into some kind of political discussion that we're not permitted to get into at this time and format. But I don't know. I'm not sure who's buying them, but there's more performance cars out now than ever before. And I think people's tastes just change. I'm not sure it has anything to do with income inequality. I mean, I just think people have different priorities. there's plenty more to do out there than drive a car, so to keep people entertained. But I mean, we're just talking about the BRZ coming out, cars like that. I mean, there's more high performance stuff now. You can buy a Chrysler product with 700 horsepower. I mean, there's just so much high performance stuff. I don't know who's buying it or if people are buying it, but I know the manufacturers are putting it out like never before. So I'm not sure I really get the argument.
It's interesting because I actually have thought about this particular topic quite a bit because, you know, a lot of people, when they watch our retro reviews, they'll be like, gosh, I miss, you know, the inexpensive whatever. And then you put the numbers through an inflation calculator and it sort of ends up being very similar to what, you know, a model that cost 30 years ago, put it through the inflation calculator, it costs very similar to what it still is today. So yeah, this is something I've certainly thought about. And I think being in a similar situation, you know, I just bought a house, so I have no interest in buying a car anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of people do think like that. And it's a shame. So yeah.
I'll give my 2 cents worth in. I think there's some validity to the argument because I've heard from folks, you know, in their 30s, they're still paying off their college debt. Many of them have hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay off there. They're raising a family, and their first priority, of course, is probably an SUV. But when you step back, look at the price of vehicles that we test on the show. $35,000, $45,000, $55,000, and we're not talking about, you know, prestige vehicles. We're talking about Hyundais and alike. So vehicle prices are being pushed up fast all over the board. We're talking $80,000 for a light-duty pickup truck that's well outfitted. And we just talked about the F-150 and all the stuff it's got on it, which is going to cost. All the infotainment aspects, all the safety stuff that everybody wants. It all costs money. So there's no question that since once we got over the 2009 Great Recession, that car prices have exploded and continue to explode. And they have grown faster than incomes, which, by the way, is historically accurate. Car prices have often grown faster than incomes. But I think that while that may be true, and I think people that used to buy sports cars, as to Brian's point, are buying Chargers and high-performance SUVs, which the Germans are, you know, turning out factories all around the world, almost like chiclets. So I think it's just they look at a sports car and think, you know, it's nice, but if I can get performance in something that I can carry home 40-pound bags of dog food and still get some driving enjoyment out of it, I'm going to go that route. So I guess I don't think the article's totally true, but I think it's a piece of the puzzle. But I worry that cars and trucks are just getting far too expensive, period. And, you know, you've got 7 and 8 year loans now. What's next? 10, 12? So,
Yeah, again, that's so much of the things that regulate all the safety and emission stuff they have to put in. I mean, it just inflates weight and inflates price. But just tagging on to what you were getting at there even basic cars have so much performance. You know, 30 years ago, if you wanted any type of performance, you had to get a performance car. Right. Now you can buy a TRD Camry that probably outhandles half of the cars that were available 30 years ago. So you don't have to buy a performance car to get some really driving car to drive. Yeah.
That's very valid. It's a great topic. I just, you know, I remember ancient history back in the 80s when we went through kind of a similar situation, looking at a lot of the cars that had bigger engines and performance, and they were costing so much, particularly the import German vehicles. And what happened? The Japanese brands came up and did luxury marks like Lexus and Acura and stole the show. And I think a lot of people are waiting for either the Chinese or perhaps even automakers from India to come in as a leveling agent on prices again. And who knows, could happen anytime.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, John, because I'm sort of the correspondence
filter.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, at MotorWeek, so I do get emails of people who are just like, man, cars are so expensive these days.
Right.
I mean, who would have thought we would have tested a Tahoe that cost like $75,000, upwards of 80?
Yeah.
That's Escalade territory. So there's definitely something to be said about the higher level trims. I mean, speaking of the F-150, the base model starts at around 30, and it goes upwards to 80 when it's all the way outfitted. That's an incredible difference between the two. So it just depends on your priorities, because I know you could still get, my brother bought a Honda Civic 2 years ago, and he was able to get it, the MSRP, under $20,000, and it wasn't a base model. So it's sort of a give and take, some there's than others, I think, as well.
Well, no question about it. If it's a car,
yeah,
it's a high value right now. I mean, there's a lot of cars out there that are sitting and not going anywhere, and you can get them for great prices. It's also one of the reasons the used car market's so hot. People can't afford the new stuff. They're looking at 2-year-old ones. All right, let's move on to our viewer question from Kathy. This is a really good question, and it probably deserves a lot of discussion like we just did. It says, I see plenty of videos on how to jumpstart a hybrid. In her case, she's got a 2016. But never see any on how to give a jumpstart from a hybrid to a non-hybrid. As you know, the hood doesn't have the battery in most cases located under it. It's somewhere else, maybe the trunk. So is it safe to give a jumpstart, and how do you do that with a RAV4 hybrid, which she has? Anybody want to start?
I'll refrain from giving any poor redneck-based advice at this time, and consult the owner's manual and anyone else who has good information.
I mean, can it be done? I would say probably, and I'm not going to speak to any experience on it. It should not be done, as far as I know. Everything I've read, we've talked to Pat Goss many times about it. And to go even further, it's not even recommended to traditionally jumpstart any car anymore, really.
Right.
It should all be done with the packs.
Because of the electronics are so sensitive to voltage charges.
Right.
Jessica, before I open my mouth, anything you want to add?
I'll let you guys handle this one.
Now, we knew this question was coming up, so I did a little extra research, and Greg and Brian are correct that, Pat has long said jump starts are a bad idea. And it's not just the electronics. It's a lot of people try and jump start their cars with really cheap jumper cables that can't handle the load and could cause other problems. But what I've read is that every hybrid's different, and that some do have if the battery's elsewhere and you can't get at it, they'll have a post. It could be inside the fuse box, as it is on a Toyota Prius, where you can connect jumper cables to start the hybrid in an emergency, or use a battery pack. On the other hand, if you want to go the other way and use your hybrid, and you're using the 12-volt system now, not the hybrid battery part. The problem is some hybrids have a regular full-size car battery that turns the starter, and if you can get to it, sure, you can do it. But others apparently use the 12-volt system just for accessories and have a small battery, maybe akin to a motorcycle. And if you try to charge something else with that battery, you won't be able to do it and can cause damage. So I have to say, Kathy, that the general consensus is don't do it. Go out and buy a $100 lithium-ion battery jump starter. Keep it with your vehicle. You want to help somebody else out. You've got that in the back. They hold charges for a long, long time. But don't try and jumpstart a non-hybrid with your hybrid unless you really, really know what you're doing. And I don't think it's even covered in the owner's manuals. If it is, read it very carefully, but it's not a good idea. I think that sums it up. Sorry, we couldn't be more positive. And with that, anybody got a rant and rave this week that we haven't covered recently, like bad driving behavior? And finally, the polls are showing, which we all knew, which is more people are getting speeding tickets because of less traffic.
Well, to piggyback on the whole being positive thing.
Good. We need that.
Well, this is not positive.
Okay.
Well, it's more or less about people not being positive. And it's fine.
Yeah.
I get it. I can definitely be a negative Nancy. But we posted a picture of the Mach-E, which I recently drove. Can't talk about it yet, but we obviously could post pictures of the style. Yeah. And just how quickly we accumulated just vicious comments. And not to be fair to everybody, nobody was really like attacking a person's mother or anything like that. But it was all about how the car that hardly anybody in the world has ever driven is a terrible car. It is an embarrassment. It was used several times. I get it. They use the Mustang name.
Right.
Do you agree with it? I don't love the idea that they did it, but it doesn't ruin my day. And it's, if I had to just make one plea to everybody, and I know it's a very small group of people, just like, I don't know, is it that serious that you have to really work yourself up on the internet about? And like, because then it gets me all upset.
Come on, Greg. Spreading hatred on the internet is all I have left. Don't take that from me.
So you're the guy who's always commenting on my videos.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm the one who posts that stuff, and it's like it's anything with the Mach-E. I mean, it's really not well received from Ford people, which I've seen it in person and driven in it, and it kind of makes me sad because I like it, and so
it's a nice looking vehicle.
Yeah,
and it goes fast.
It does. Some people are just some Debbie Downers, I guess.
I think they're probably, there's going to be a big resistance, or there is a big resistance to the whole idea of performance in EVs. People just can't get over the fact that EVs are so fast because of instant torque. I have noticed, though, that a lot of the articles and press materials, especially stuff from Ford, they seem to be downplaying the Mustang name a little bit. I mean, it's becoming more and more Mach-E when they talk about it. Maybe they're getting that kind of flack too. But same thing happened when Porsche did its first SUV. I mean, there were people we didn't have the internet like we have it today as far as being such a communicative system. But everybody you talk to that was a Porsche fan just thought the idea was horrible, including myself. And now it's what saved the company and best-selling models. So it is the future, folks. Whether you like it or not, get on. If you don't want to get on board, that's fine. But I don't think you can fight it.
I do find myself saying Ford, almost like sometimes Ford Mach-E instead of Ford Mustang Mach-E.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
So maybe they didn't anticipate that either. But I just want to say Mach-E, but it's Mustang Mach-E because it's part of the Mustang brand family. But that, that's a whole other thing with Ford trying to build these families with, the brands within the brand. So like with Bronco. So that's a whole nother story.
And I think they were trying to make the point that an EV can be very, very fast as a Mustang. So, I see why there's a lot of, we're still hearing rumors of, an EV Corvette and a Corvette SUV, and who knows.
Yeah, I think just the important last note is nobody's coming to take your current Mustang, and they're going to keep building their Mustang, the new Mustang. So just everybody take a breath. It's okay.
I mean, even those folks out in California, it's a long way until 15 years till you supposedly can't buy a new gasoline-powered vehicle anymore. And we'll see whether that's really true or not. At least I hope I do. And with that, let's bring to a close our podcast number 243. Thank you all for being Brian and Greg and Jessica, for basically just your terrific comments as always. To all of you out there, we want to thank the folks you don't normally see on the podcast. Jim Bigwood, who is our audio supervisor, to make sure that everything comes out the way we sort of intended to, or hope it will. Greg, of course, here is our producer and takes care of the editing. Bob Mixter created the whole idea of podcast. But it's you out there that basically make these podcasts what they are, your enthusiasm when we get the feedback. If you haven't caught the podcast before, thanks for joining us. But remember, you can catch MotorWeek on just about anywhere you have an electronic device. Of course, we've got our MotorWeek.org website, our YouTube website, youtube.com/MotorWeek. Have all of our features that Jessica basically makes sure as soon as we've aired a show or put it up on cable, the segments go up there. We're on cable on our Motor Trend cable partner, and of course on public TV stations around the country, and even Armed Forces television overseas. But if you don't know where to watch us, go to our website, pbs.motorweek.org or pbs.org/motorweek. You can pull down a list and put in your zip code, find your local times. Wherever you go, if you want to keep up with MotorWeek, you can do it. And of course, we try to do that with our website with the daily news updates. So we're there. We're part of the automotive world, and we hope to be around for a long time to keep you informed on what's coming down the pipe, EV and otherwise. So next time, thanks for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by rockauto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.